Eyes when you're having fun.
Absolutely. This is super exciting. All right. All right. Perfect. I think we're now broadcasting live on YouTube as well for Credit Banking Mastermind number 28. Hello, YouTube, and welcome. Perfect. I think we're now broadcasting live on glad and grateful to have you here. Let me go ahead now. And everybody can see my screen. So now what I want to do is I want to start my PowerPoint. Oh, but it switched over to the wrong screen. All right, there we go. All right, folks, thank you for your patience. Here we go. Let's get started. Each and every week we come to you talking about credit banking and the search for the lost American dream. This is super exciting. I'm super grateful that each of you are here because this is an exciting strategy that we're talking about. We're talking about eliminating our debt in about 1/3 the time. And we'll get into more details on that.
Super fast.
But before we go any further, Ray, will you read the disclaimer?
All right. I am not a licensed attorney, accountant, financial.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, folks, what you have to do is your due diligence, okay? We're sharing information with you that's designed to be general information in scope, but you need to research this and consult competent legal financial professionals in your life to make sure that these strategies work for you.
That's right.
My name's Joseph Smith. This is my business partner, Mr. Ray Fleming.
Yeehaw.
We are the Wise Guys in Ties, wise in the ways of helping you learn how to gain control of your finances, to stop letting circumstances control your life, and to begin to take control and create your own economy that you can use to achieve your dreams. Whatever God put you on this earth to do, that's what we want to help you to do. Our contact information is there on the screen. We'll show it again at the end, of course. But for those people who are looking to eliminate their debt, and they've come here to get control of their finances and to create your own economy, you're in the right place. So we're talking about credit banking. Now, each and every week, we have new people that are joining us on YouTube. We have people that are here with us live in the actual this mastermind, this webinar that we host each and every week, where we get together. Not only do we cover what is credit banking, but we work on a case study each and every week where we look at different people's numbers and we try to practice the strategies so that you can get comfortable using these strategies. And once you're comfortable practicing with other people's numbers, then you can have that confidence to move forward with your own finances. What do you say to that, Ray?
I love it. Time to do it.
All right. So what is credit banking? Here is my definition of credit banking. Credit banking uses lines of credit to free up cash flow to transfer highly expensive amortized loan interest into simpler and less expensive forms of interest. This has the effect of radically decreasing the total number of loan payments, which in turn reduces the total amount of interest paid, which has the result of aggressively paying down the principal loan balance in about 1/3 the time. So that's credit banking. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate you. No, I mean, that is credit banking, but it goes beyond that definition. For some people, that's over their head. Other people, they sort of get it, but we're going to dive in way deep today. So what do you need to do to get started with business credit? Well, if it's a I'm sorry, did I say business credit?
You did.
Well, business credit is important. You need that too, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. That was the last webinar we did. Joey, come on. Get with it. We're talking about credit banking. All right. So if credit banking was a cookie, right? And you needed the recipe, what are the ingredients, right? Chocolate chip cookie, right? You need the flour, you need the
eggs.
chocolate chip, eggs, right?
Yep.
So to do successfully credit banking, what are the 3 ingredients that we need? First of all, you need debt. Nobody has problems finding the first ingredient. That's been my experience. What about you?
Oh, yeah, that's easy.
But the second one gets a little bit harder. We need positive monthly cash flow. So, and we cover this. So each and every week we break down credit banking into, it's a large strategy. It's not necessarily complex, but it is very involved. And so we focus in on different aspects. But when we talk about budgeting, we help people learn how to maximize their positive monthly cash flow through increasing your income and decreasing your expenses. But this is critical because that's the fuel that drives the whole credit banking strategy. And the last thing you need is the vehicle to put the fuel into, right? That is your line of credit. So with a line of credit, we use lines of credit, and we talked about lines of credit last week, and we looked at the math between calculating the total interest payment on the total interest that would be on a loan versus the total interest that you would find on, say, a credit card. And we looked at interest only payments, we looked at amortization schedules. So, like we really determined how inexpensive a line of credit is compared to a loan. And we looked at things like, well, they're both simple interest and they're both APRs, but we looked at how they were amortized, which was totally different. And we did the math, and that was so much fun. A lot of people really like seeing the numbers and seeing how it all breaks down. And so we basically determined that the line of credit was the way to go. So if you are somebody who has debt, you have positive monthly cash flow, and you have a line of credit to work with, then you have all the ingredients necessary to do credit banking. But how did we get into the situation where we even need credit banking with all this out of control debt? Well, I'm going to take you through a little story here, folks. So what's playing on your screen is a clip from a very famous movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark by Paramount, starring Harrison Ford. And what this is think of it as a parable. You're Indiana Jones, and you've done everything right in your life. You went to school, you got good grades, you studied, you understood the pitfalls of debt, you made sure you had a good credit score, a low debt to income ratio. You've done everything you could, and you're pursuing that American dream. I mean, the American dream is different for everybody. Here in this movie, he's going after a golden idol, but let's say that golden idol is your American dream. So he's going for the American dream, but what is the American dream? I mean, it's different for a lot of people. It could be, getting a house and a car, a couple of cars, but there it is. It lies before you, and you've worked hard. You've went to school. Like I said, you got the good grades to get the job, to finally put yourself in the position where you can achieve the American dream. But it's not without dangers, right? There are a lot of pitfalls. You know that there's debt that you have to get, and you have to qualify for loans, and all these things. So you're going to walk very carefully. You're going to do everything right. You're going to manage your budget just right. You're going to not have too many inquiries, keep your utilization down, right? You're doing everything you're supposed to just to reach your goal. But I mean, what a lot of people don't talk about is what does the American dream that we're searching for, what does it actually cost? And so when we look at what does it cost, think about it. $100,000 for a college education, $250,000 for a house, $50,000 for a new vehicle, or maybe $50,000 buys 2 used vehicles. I mean, you also got to combine that with $15,000 in consumer credit, right? By the time you add it all up, your American dream costs $500,000. But then when you earn as a single income earner, maybe $60,000 in your take-home pay, or maybe $80,000 to $100,000 as a married couple, how are you ever going to pay that off? I mean, you achieve your goal, and then it all begins to fall apart on you. Like, what happened? All this, I got everything, but I didn't realize the American dream was turning into the American nightmare, and a huge ball of poverty, of debt, is rolling after me. I mean, I didn't realize that I didn't have enough money to pay for all this, and the spending's out of control, the debt's out of control. What are we going to do? You're just like running for your lives, and you get to the point where you're just trying to stay ahead, and then the bank comes, and what are they ready to do? They say, hey, anything we lent money to you on, we can take away from you. And so you're like, oh, there's my American dream. There goes my house I'm foreclosed on, or my cars are repossessed, and you have to give it up. Maybe you have to apply for bankruptcy, or you use some type of refinancing, just enough to get those creditors away from you so you can run, and then you're juggling your payments, trying to move one payment to the next payment, just staying 1 foot ahead of your creditors. And they're coming after you because they're out for blood. You owe them money, right? You went $500,000 into debt for your American dream, and it is not feeling like a dream at all. What are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to manage all of this? You're just running for your life. This is where people end up. I mean, who are you going to turn to? Fortunately, as you're like Indiana Jones, you're running for help. You're calling out to your friend, help, help, and you happen to see wise guys in ties down on the riverbank. Right, we were minding our own business. We wanted to just fish, but never mind. We're getting into our airplane. We're going to go ahead and help you take off. We're going to use our knowledge of the financial system. We're going to help you break free. You've got to take some risks, though. You got to jump. You got to have some faith, right? And swim for it. Now, the creditors are still coming after you. We're going to help you. And today, our goal is to help you with how you're looking at paying off your bills. We're your friend, and we're going to describe it for you in detail, the steps that you must take to escape, right? To escape that financial burden and become financially free. Folks, this was just a bit of a parallel or a parable to describe the state that most people are in, and to also kind of describe for you why we're talking about things in context of Indiana Jones, right? We're talking about things in terms of Indiana Jones because I mean, it was so great. He did everything right, but everything fell apart.
That's right.
I mean, it makes for a great movie. I love it. But I mean, how frustrating is that? How frustrating is it to, you did everything right. You opened your bank account, you got your loan, you did your credit right, and then it's all crashing down on you. I mean, people feel this way, right? I mean, and so this is what we do. Each and every week, we break the whole credit banking strategy into different parts. We've already covered budget and lines of credit. Today, we're really focusing on the actual strategy of credit banking. Now, we don't dive right into credit banking on day one when we're actually talking about credit banking, which makes a lot of people think, well, at some point, are you ever actually going to talk about credit banking? I mean, this is a credit banking webinar, and for the last 2 weeks, we haven't done any credit banking. It's because you got to understand that if we go back and you look at the map here, each of these is a different piece. With the budget is where we get the fuel. With the lines of credit is where we get the vehicle, so we can put the fuel into the vehicle. Credit banking, think of it as your GPS that guides you towards the land of financial freedom, right? Towards our American dream. Our American dream, as I define it, is financial freedom. That's what we want. We thought we wanted all this stuff, but what we really want is financial freedom, because we don't want to own anything anymore. We just want to control the things that we own, the things that are out there. We don't have to own them, because when we own them, it creates so much liability and so much debt. And so now we're shifting away from that. And now as we put the whole map we got to understand each piece of the map, but when we put it together, it leads us to the land of financial freedom, which is what we're working on tonight. So each week we've been working on building up this budget. We've been looking at the budget of an average 2-income American family, and we've gotten these numbers that you see on your screen from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They get their information from the US Census. And so what we're looking at is, in this pie chart here, is 2-income family. There's no kids. Their net income after they've paid their taxes and their FICA and their Medicare, Medicaid, all that, $5,000 a month. And they have $1,200 that goes to their mortgage payment. They've got $600 going towards 2 auto payments. They've got $600 going to their credit card payments. And they have $1,200 that pays for their lifestyle. I mean, their food, power, water, if they go to Starbucks and get a coffee, right? Netflix, whatever that is. And then the last chunk there is people's savings. And a lot of people are putting money away into 401k. So the bulk of that would be, while that's not technically a savings account, the way that the government looks at your 401k is they think of that in terms of long-term savings.
Long-term savings.
Right.
I'm just making gestures over here. I feel like I'm Teller from Penn and Teller. I'm just gonna.
You're gonna sign language what I'm doing here. Well, I mean, there's some important assumptions though that we need to make when we start doing the credit banking strategy. You want to share what those assumptions are?
Well, we're going to assume that the figures and the numbers have been rounded. So nothing ends in zero, of course. So
Right.
these are just for example, for explanation purposes. And that's why we're simplifying it that way. We're also going to make an assumption that your income is not going to increase or decrease, because just for the ease of explanation purposes. Also, that we expect your lifestyle expenses to remain the same during this 5-10 year period. Also,
but is that realistic?
No.
Does income stay the same for 5 to 10 years?
Well, it fluctuates, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, there's waves and there's ups and downs, but that's where understanding this can really stabilize your cash flow.
But what about your expenses? Do they stay pretty much the same over a 5 to 10 year period of time?
No, those will change.
So we're basically going to give them an example of income and expenses that are static.
Right.
This is going to help you understand how this works. But credit banking, because of the fact that your income will change and your expenses will change, you need to constantly reassess, reevaluate where you're at. And so like a GPS, right? Recalculating. So you're on your way and you start off with your destination and it calculates everything for you. But along the way, you might have to stop and get gas, or you might need to take a slight detour, or there was a flat tire or something. So the GPS has to recalculate along the way. So keep in mind that that's the analogy that we're going after here. So what you see, kind of like in the Indiana Jones movie, right? There's always this plane that's flying and you see the red line. Here's how the credit banking strategy works. The income that comes in, instead of going into the bank account, bypasses the bank account and goes directly into your line of credit. So before we were talking about that the average 2-income American family has a $15,000 credit limit on average, carrying about a $12,000 balance, and all of that at 21% interest. So the first step is to put all of your money into your line of credit. And usually people who see this for the first time are like, you already lost me. We're on step one and you lost me. Because if I put all my money onto the line of credit, how do we pay the rent? How do we pay the cars? How do we eat? Right? I mean, these are important questions. Stay with me, folks. All will be explained. All will be answered. But just go with me for a moment here. So we're taking all of the income and we're putting it into the line of credit. So when you do that, you now look at your budget. Look at this budget. This budget on the pink little wedge there, you notice that $600 has been budgeted for a minimum monthly payment on that $12,000 balance. Right? That could be across 3 different credit cards. It could be an overdraft account, could be a personal line of credit, secured line of credit, home equity line of credit, whatever it is, whatever the mixture of all these credit lines are, you have a total minimum monthly payment of $600. But if you take $5,000 and you place that all into your lines of credit, do you have to budget anymore for the $600 minimum monthly payment?
No, because you already satisfied it.
All right. So if we did that, boom, that's gone. But so where does that money in our budget go? Because we had to set that money aside, but now we don't have to.
Well, that goes to your cash flow.
Yes. Now, a lot of people, that's true. It goes to your cash flow. But a lot of people, what they think is, well, that the $600, even if I overpaid it, it's still there. Like the bank will still take the $600 minimum monthly payment out. This is where a lot of people get stuck. See, that's not the case, because the minimum monthly payment could be, depending on your line of credit, could be an interest-only payment, could be a mixture of principal and interest. We looked at that last week when we were calculating all of the various lines of credit that were out there. But keep in mind that when you overpay this, you're actually going to go into an interest-only payment. And so it's going to be broken down to the APR. So if this is 21% interest, what's going to happen is they're going to take your average daily balance, right? And then they're going to take it and basically multiply it to make, see, I'm not showing the math today, but 21%, that's charged over the year. So if we divide that by 12, you're really going to pay about 1.75% interest on the average daily balance of any given billing cycle. Right. So that is a very small amount of money, just so you know. So this is where we're at. So when we don't have to budget for that, a portion of that $600 is going to go towards paying the interest right? And we'll come back and we'll throw those numbers back in. But just because we were talking about with our assumptions and we're rounding figures, we're going to just say all of that flows to our cash flow. So before, we had in this budget, when you looked at the budget, we have $5,000 that come in and $5,000 goes out, living paycheck to paycheck, the average 2-income American family. And there's no cash flow. Ray, if you're a real estate investor, so if I pitched you a deal where I've got this awesome property that brings in $5,000 of revenue, but the monthly service on it is $5,000. Do you want to buy it and take on the liability and the responsibility of making those payments?
Well, no, because I mean, 1 month without revenue means I'm out of $5,000 right there. That, no.
You mean you don't plan for every year having 100% occupancy?
No, not at all.
What is typical occupancy in real estate?
Typically, I mean, just to be safe, you want to run about 80%, but it also depends on the market that you're in.
Right.
I mean, but I run it around 80%.
Right, and you're talking about just an average rental, not
Right.
like a U.S. HUD home.
Right. I mean, this is a yearly leases. By the time they get out and you got to clean it up, get it ready, and then by the time somebody actually gets approved, I mean, it's 1 to 2 months to get somebody else in there.
So that means that you would have to, with any kind of rental, you have to prepare for the fact that you might have to make that payment.
Right.
So you wouldn't take a deal that had zero cash flow attached to it?
Not something that's similar to this. There's always the exception on other areas, but if this is a long-term holding right here, this is not like we're fixing flipping ourselves. This is our investment in life. This is a long-term, our long-term holding strategy.
If you think about it, I mean, if they taught this stuff in school, in school, it's all about making the grade.
Yep.
Right. You want to get an A. You want to do your best and get a superior rating. But if that's supposed to prepare you to be a contributing member of society, to be responsible, to be able to go out and get a job and manage your finances, if the result of our education system leads people to living paycheck to paycheck, what grade would you give this budget?
Ooh, probably similar to my high school transcript. That's going to be a pretty bad grade. Pretty bad grade. I mean, F is for fantastic.
But think about that, folks. This is not taught because, I mean, you might think I'm a conspiracy theorist, but there is really a system that's already been set for you. The 40-40-40 plan. Work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life to eventually one day retire on that 401k that you have that will pay you 40% of what you made every month. So here you're living paycheck to paycheck. Imagine only getting paid 40% of this after you retire. That's what banks, corporations, and the government have planned out for you. You go to school, right, and you learn how to get a job, right, so that you can pay your taxes. And that job requires you're going to buy stuff. So the corporations want to sell to you, but everything's too expensive and you can't afford it. So what are you going to do? Well, then comes the banks. The banks are there to lend you the money. And so all work together to make sure that you stay in the matrix. You're stuck, right? So we're trying to break free of this system. And the debt, that's like your prison. That's your chain. That's what's got you stuck here. So by creating cash flow, we begin to start to break free of the dependence upon this system. So by taking all of our income and putting into our line of credit, we don't have to budget for the $600 anymore. So that flows to our cash flow. One of the reasons why that's great is because we didn't have to get an extra job. We didn't have to work some overtime to make that extra money. We're just changing how we move money. Money used to go from our paycheck into our checking account. Now money is going to go from our paycheck into our line of credit. Our line of credit is going to become our new banking account, which is why it's called credit banking. So we eliminate the credit card payment. Boom. So what else are we going to do? Well, this is where it gets maybe a little controversial for some folks. We're going to take a look at all that $1,400 that we're putting away with these two different incomes, a total of 4 paychecks in a month, and putting maybe up to as much as 10% of each paycheck away into a 401k savings. Now, 401ks, they have a purpose. We actually work with a lot of people with 401ks and IRAs. There is a right way to use it. It's called a self-directed 401k or a self-directed IRA. But usually when it's attached to an employer that you're currently working for and that you're currently contributing to, you can't self-direct those accounts. I get it. But here's the problem with those accounts. You are giving money to people to go make money for you. So you're putting $1,400 away a month, and that's going off to where? To Wall Street? That's going to a broker who's investing in mutual funds. What mutual funds? What are you invested in? Where is this money going? Is there foreign currencies you're investing in? I mean, you don't have any control. And the broker is making money regardless if your portfolio makes money, because he makes money on the transactions and the fees. So think about a system where you give somebody else your money, right? I mean, people put money away in savings account. A portion of that $1,400 is going into a bank savings account. Well, what kind of rate of return are you making in your savings account? What's your return on investment? Less than 1%, 1%, maybe?
Less, yeah, less.
But inflation, you've always got to prepare for it to be around 3%. Sometimes it's when the economy is booming, it's been below that, but inflation can get really high. And so if you're not making at least 3% annually on your money in an account, then you're losing, you're falling behind. And think about the stock market. I mean, it's up, it's down, it's all over the place. And people say, well, it makes money over time. And it does, but does your portfolio make money over time? This is one of the things that's the sad secret is, yeah, the stock market makes all these gains, the indexes go up, but most people's portfolios don't. When they take a hit and then the stock market bounces back up, they don't rebound at the same rate that the stock market does. And as they start to come up and then there's another slam down, they go lower. Mm-hmm. And so it's a sad thing to see, but here's the point I'm trying to make. Nobody cares more about your money than you. Nobody cares more about your retirement. Nobody cares more about the performance of every dollar that you have than you do. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to get educated. Learn about investing. Don't think to yourself, well, I just give it to somebody and then they'll make money for me. Because they will make money, but it won't necessarily be for you. They'll make money for themselves. So the bank, think about this, you put money into your savings account, they're paying you back maybe 1%. And then when you need to get a car or a house, where does the bank get the money that they lend you for your car and your house? Well, they get it from your savings account. So they're going to charge you 6%, but you're only going to get paid 1%. Who's winning and who's losing?
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
It is. It's really nuts.
And so, folks, all I want to do is encourage you and empower you to take the money that you're putting every week into this black hole account that you have, that you're thinking, well, but I'm trying to be responsible and prepare for the future. Well, be responsible now. Take care of your finances now. Invest in yourself. Invest in your future and recapture some of this lost income. You can change your deductions. You can change your contributions, pull some of that out. Even though there's money in that account, that's still great. Leave the money there. It'll still grow. And then when you're ready at the right time to start a business and break free, you can roll those over into self-directed IRAs. And there's a lot of beautiful things that you can do with a self-directed IRA that you control, that you can get checkbook control over. But that's for another video. But here's what I'm trying to encourage you. This is why it's hard, is we're going to stop contributing to money to those 401ks. And that is going to put money into our cash flow, because now when we're not contributing money to that retirement account, we have freed up cash flow. But people are concerned because that was my rainy day account. That was my emergency account. What are we going to do if an emergency happens? Is there any answer that we're going to cover later on that?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover. Everything is going, you're going to have an emergency account. You're going to have a savings account. It's just not going to be the way that you were trained to think about it.
Exactly. So a lot of people, what they don't realize is that when you put money into your line of credit, it's not gone. Everybody thinks, well, my cash is gone. No, it's a currency exchange. You have converted cash into available credit. So that's all that's happened. And there's a small little transaction fee of like 1.75%.
Right.
That's it. So think about it in those terms. So here's the new budget, $5,000 in, $3,000 out, and we have freed up cash flow without getting an extra job, without having to cut back. Look, see, we didn't cut back on the lifestyle. So we didn't have to go on the beans and rice diet, right? We didn't have to do that. We kept everything. We kept our expenses the same. The income remained the same. We just looked at areas where our debt wasn't as efficient as it could be. And we're taking money that we would have given to people in Wall Street to make a whole bunch of money and drive fancy cars and work in big, tall, posh buildings. And now we're going to use that to accelerate us getting out of debt. And then we're going to continue to use that money that we would have put away to grow and increase our wealth. So let us begin. So now we're looking at how does it actually work? Well, what you're looking at on is a graph here of money over time. So we have money over time. So we have the available credit limit of $15,000 that we were talking about, but we're carrying a $12,000 balance. And remember, I said take all of the income and apply it to the line of credit. So what does that look like? Well, here's what happens. The moment you put that money, that income into the line of credit, what happens? What happens to a $12,000 balance when you pay $5,000 to it?
It goes down.
To what?
Well, it goes down to
12 minus 5.
Yeah, it goes down to I don't know, $7,000.
There you go. There you go. You know, that high school education is really paying off for you.
Yeah, we know we had a question come in from just on the last segment there.
Sure.
Eugene was saying that according to what we were displaying there, if doesn't everybody have positive cash flow? What would be a negative cash flow with somebody with a job?
Well, that's a great question. We've actually worked with, thank you, Eugene, for your question. We've actually worked with a lot of people, and we've worked in scenarios where there is a negative cash flow. You know, in the current situation that people are facing, where people have been downsized, people have lost jobs, people have gone from working their job to being on unemployment. We've watched people who were living at a certain lifestyle all of a sudden have it cut. And so the expenses didn't go away, but the income decreased. And so then people are leveraging credit to try and keep up and find some way to really draw down their expenses as quickly as possible. So on average, most people can't live very long in a negative cash flow situation. But what happens to a lot of people in short periods of time is life happens. Life comes at you sideways. And so all of a sudden now you find yourself, I mean, people go through divorce, people get evicted, people people die, there's health issues, the economy goes through major changes. There could be, an outbreak of a war or something like that. And that could have a positive benefit to some folks. It could have a negative impact on others. Imagine if you're a military family and you're used to bringing in all this income through a business, but now you have to leave your business to go fight for your country. Well, the business isn't going to make any money. Now you are going to make money working for the military, but if you were making a lot of money in your business and now a situation changed where you had to leave, now you're not making as much money. So now you're in a negative cash flow situation.
And the way that we define cash flow is where
income. So cash flow is when your income exceeds your, I'm sorry. Let me redefine. Cash flow is after all of your expenses have been paid, the money that's left over is your positive monthly cash flow. That's what you use to pay down your debts. So when you're to get in a negative situation, you either have a dramatic increase in expenses, like all of a sudden, boom, my sister, she's in jail, and all of a sudden I have to take care of her kids and her dogs. Well, that just really increased all my expenses.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of folks that we talk to, it's just living beyond their means. Is that, I guess, a way to put it?
Well, and that can creep up on people. Yeah. Like you start getting behind. There was you get a situation where the car breaks down and you repair it, but now there wasn't enough money to pay a bill. So you float a bill and you pay it, and then you end up paying that with credit, but now you can't afford the new payment that comes with the credit that you used, and it snowballs on people. So hopefully that answers your question, but we definitely want to avoid.
That's a way better answer than I could have put in the chat.
Perfect. So back to credit banking as a strategy. When you take $5,000 and you put it onto a $12,000 balance, you immediately drop the balance down to $7,000. However, don't forget that within the month of, even though you had $5,000 of income, you still have $3,000 of monthly expenses. So we've got to put the expenses back on the card as well. So if I start with a $12,000 balance and I put $5,000 of income onto that card, but then also put $3,000 of expenses, you'll notice that my balance has decreased by $2,000. That's just the first month. Notice that the amount that it has decreased is actually equal to my cash flow. So I have $2,000 of cash flow. So cash flow is going to be the speed at which I pay down my lines of credit. It's the fuel that drives the credit banking system. The vehicle is the line of credit. The fuel is the cash flow. What we're driving down, what we're driving is our debt all the way down to zero. So if my debt is decreasing now at a rate of $2,000 a month, and I started with a $12,000 balance, how many months is it going to take me to pay off that debt? If I just continue to put my income, expenses, 12,000 divided by 2,000, right? That's going to be 6 months. Now, I told you we were rounding numbers and we were looking at that, but I do want you to know that the total interest paid over the 6-month period of time is going to be $629.36. So we do keep track of that. We do actually go down to the penny and calculate this out, but this is at 21% APR calculated off of an average daily balance as we go through this. So think about that. You had a $12,000 balance and you just paid it off using the credit banking method in 6 months. Didn't get an extra job, didn't have to work overtime, didn't have to cut back on your lifestyle. And yet you made money and you paid your expenses and you lived your life, but you ran everything through your lines of credit and it just got paid off. Now, how long, exactly, that's great. Stuff. But how long would it have taken to pay off the $12,000 balance if you had just made the minimum monthly payments? So I think I covered that in a later slide, but let's see. Okay, so what happens now? Well, remember we had this looks like I'm repeating the same slide. You know, I think I have this slide in here twice, folks. So just as an added benefit, I thought you'd like to see it twice. Okay, so, but here's what I wanted to get to. So if we stopped using the credit card and continued to just make the minimum monthly payments, it could take 2 to 3 years to pay off. I mean, specifically, exactly, if you stopped using the card, it would take 25 months to pay off. But what is the likelihood that you could go 25 months without needing to use your credit card again in case of an emergency or a major purchase comes up? So you really see that even though you can get out of debt in a couple of years, even a $12,000 debt in a couple of years, you really also can't. If you've gotten to the point where, oh, emergency comes up and you're used to having that card available, we never see the debt actually get paid down. So, but what we did, instead of taking 25 months to pay off a $12,000 balance, we got it done in 6 months.
That's awesome.
Now, what happens over that 6-month period of time of taking a credit card and you have a balance on the credit card, but we're paying it down more than what we use it every month?
Well, your score's going up. You're building your credibility with the lender for sure.
Exactly. My utilization's going down, yep. Right? And so you could, within a 6-month period of time of doing this, or maybe it could take 9 months or as much as 12 months, but you can qualify for a credit limit increase. And that's not uncommon.
Nope, not at all.
Now, there's 2 ways to look at this, right? I look at this as like, look, you're being rewarded for using the credit card the right way. And the bank likes that they're making money off of this and they want to encourage you to do more. Now, my friend here has a different perspective.
Well, see, you know, I think you're being rewarded, which if you know how to use the tool, if not, it's just a bigger rope to hang yourself with.
So you could say that perhaps they're like, okay, well, maybe that $12,000 was a fluke. Now let's see what we can really do. But you see, folks, with credit banking, remember we talked about there's 3 ingredients. You need debt, you need what? you remember what they were? You need debt,
You need cash flow.
cash flow,
Mm-hmm.
and third?
Wait, what? We need debt, we need and we need some type of line of credit.
Yes, that's right. So we have a problem here. We just paid off our credit card. Now we have a problem because there's no more debt on our credit card. So now we can't do credit banking anymore. I mean, we
gotta get some debt.
Yeah, we got ourselves a $10,000 credit limit increase, which is awesome. I mean, imagine if you had left all that money in your savings account or back with the lender, not the lender. I'm sorry, the 401k. Would you in 6 months have gotten access to another $10,000 likely in your 401ks? I mean, think about this. If you save, you scrimp and you save, and you get to the point in your checking or your savings account where you have $10,000 now in that account. I mean, good for you. You did it. Does the bank come along and say, congratulations, let's give you another $10,000? I mean, think about this. You just got access to $10,000 more with your line of credit by using it the right way. This could have happened in as little as 6 months, or it could take as much as 12 months, but they're giving you access to more of other people's money. Credit is just as liquid, if not even more liquid than cash. And now you went from having $15,000 to work with to now you're having $25,000 to work with. So this is pretty powerful because now we can do more. Now we're going to have to get some debt, right? So where are we going to look for debt? Because our credit lines are zeroed out. So we're going to have to go maybe take out that loan over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the $2,000 balance we have on the mortgage. Now there's some rules that we got to follow here. Here are the rules. When you're using a line of credit in a credit banking strategy, rule number 1, or you could look at these as priorities. Priority number 1 is that these credit lines are for emergencies. So we must leave 50% of our line open for emergencies. Got that? That is critical that you do it. We're not racking up these cards because if we do, we're going to throw our utilization off. We're going to actually decrease our lines. We don't want to do that. So we're only going to work with 50% of our actual limits. Now, the second thing is we're going to use that 50% that we have for debt pay down, right? We're going to put debt onto the card and then we're going to pay it down using the credit banking strategy that we just showed. This means that the credit card is not for going on a vacation. It's not for buying a big screen TV. We're not buying stuff anymore with our lines of credit. It is now a tool used to eliminate debt. And then the third thing is if we have no emergencies and we pay off all of our debt, then a line of credit is for purchasing assets. Assets I'm going to define as anything that pays you money just by simply owning it. So you can go ahead and go into debt to buy an asset if the asset, the money or the return on the asset is greater than the cost of paying for the debt that you use to get the asset. Mm-hmm. It's kind of complicated how I just said that, but think about it in terms like this. If you used $20,000, or so let's say you used $10,000 to get into a rental property, and that's costing you perhaps somewhere around $500-600 a month to pay for that line that you took out for the rental property, but you're able to charge $1,000 in rent. Now, what you can do with that is there might be other debt that's associated with it, but if you're cash flowing $200, $300, $400 a month on this asset, even after all the debt has been calculated, now you have, as I defined, an asset, and that was good debt to go into because you went into debt to get the asset, but the asset is paying you more than the debt service that it cost for it. So these are the rules, or these are the priorities. Number 1, emergencies, leaving 50% of our line open for emergencies. Debt pay down. The other half of our line of credit is used for paying debt down only. And once we have no debt, then we look for opportunities to purchase assets where the numbers work out that we make more money off of the asset than it cost us to buy the asset. Okay? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Here we go. So we're going to go ahead now. Now that we have $25,000, what's half of that? What's half of that?
Of 25,000?
Yeah.
Well, if we're looking at about 12,500.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to look at taking $13,000 and putting that right on the card. Now, someone's like, wait a minute, you're breaking rule number 1 right off the bat. You just said not to go over 50% utilization. Okay, but folks, follow me on this, because think about your average daily balance and think about how we're going to utilize this line of credit. So I am going to take $13,000 and make a principal only payment onto my mortgage. But as I go through this, in the first month, when I put $5,000 on and then I put $3,000 back on the card, I'm actually at $11,000
Right.
at the end there. So
That's right.
I'm under my 50% that I was talking about. In fact, I could potentially even go a little bit more than 13 if I wanted to, but you know, I don't want to toe the line. I want to make sure that we're able to do this. Now, $13,000 as a principal only payment. We're going to use our line of credit to do that. Now, if it took 12 months to pay off $12,000 with $2,000 of cash flow, how many months is it going to take to pay off $13,000 with $2,000 of cash flow? Well, it's already on your screen because I clicked ahead. You can see it's going to take 7 months, right? Now, total interest paid over that time is $742.06. Okay, so great. We just decreased our principal loan balance by $13,000, and it only cost us $742.06 of interest. Now, let's compare. Now, we talked about this last week when we were looking at the loans. Being in this loan for already 5 years, the average two-income American family made every payment, so they've put $72,000 towards their loan. They're 5 years into it. And so what's happened with their $200,000 loan is they've paid that down by principal. These are rounded numbers, of course, by $13,000, a little bit more than $13,000. And the interest is just shy of $59,000 over 5 years. That's 60 months of making the payments. Think about that. Think about that for one moment. In 5 years of making the minimum $1,200 a month payment, you paid $72,000 towards that mortgage. You paid your principal down over 5 years by $13,000. It took you 5 years to pay down $13,000 at a cost of $59,000 or just shy of it in interest. Now, with the credit banking strategy, we paid down the principal by $13,000 in 7 months, and it cost us $742.06 in interest. So I ask you, look at that. Which one is faster, paying down the principal by $13,000 in 5 years, or paying it down by $13,000 in 7 months? And then after you look at that, which one is actually cheaper? Paying almost $59,000 in total interest over 5 years, or paying $742.06 in interest over 7 months? And what you'll see when you look at that is that not only is credit banking faster, but it's cheaper and it's saving you more money. It's cost effective. Think about this. The $13,000 principal only payment that you make saves you right off the bat $38,713 in interest, and it also saves you 3 years and 7 months. So think about it like this. You're Marty McFly and you're getting into your DeLorean and you're going back to the future. You're skipping over $38,713 of interest, and you've traveled now 3 years and 7 months in your amortization schedule, and you pick up right there and you begin to make your payments. That's awesome. You don't owe the money that you skipped over. So not only are you saving money by paying it down cheaper, you're saving interest, you're saving time, right? Because you're creating fewer payments. In fact, if you look at how it works out, using a credit card account of 21% interest with a net income of $5,000, we were talking about total expenses of $3,000, what you have is $2,000 of cash flow. At this point, when we made that $13 or $13,000 principal only payment, from that point, we're already in this for 5 years. It's going to take us 6.83 years. That's 6 years and 10 months, right? It's going to take us 6 years and 10 months to completely pay off. Now, keep in mind that if we just kept making the payments, this is a 30-year loan, so there's 25 years left to pay on this. We're getting that 25 years left paid off in 6 years and 10 months. And we're saving ourselves over $118,000 in interest. What do you have to say to that? Woohoo! That's what I like. Thank you. Folks, this is incredible. This is the power of credit banking. And this is what we're bringing to you. So how do you know which debts to pay off first? Right? I was talking with, actually it was Eugene, and I'm glad you're here tonight. Eugene was asking, well, how do we know which debts to pay off? Well, we talked about, we have to identify which debts are the most inefficient. And so people ask, should I pay off the biggest amount or the smallest debt or the lowest or highest interest rates? Well, what is it? Well, we use a formula to determine our debt efficiency. And that is our debt efficiency is equal to the loan balance divided by our minimum payment. This will give us a ratio to see how much of our monthly budget is allocated towards paying down these debts. All right, so let's look at an example. All right, we have loan number 1 and loan number 2. Loan number 1 is a $10,000 balance. Loan number 2 is a $10,000 balance. Now, here's one of the things we're not talking about. We're not talking about term. We're not talking about interest rate. All we're looking at is balance and monthly payment. So the minimum payment on loan 1 is $100 a month, and the minimum payment on loan number 2 is $1,000 a month. So when we calculate the loan efficiency, you'll notice that the loan efficiency by taking 10,000 divided by 100 on loan 1, and then taking 10,000 and dividing by 1,000, you'll notice that we have an efficiency of 100 on loan 1, and we have an efficiency of 10 on loan number 2. So what does that mean, though? What do those numbers mean? Well, we have to look at this on a continuum. Anything below 50 is inefficient. It means you have a large amount of money servicing a small amount of debt. An efficient would be a small amount of money servicing a large amount of debt. And so that's anything that's 100 or over 100 is an efficient debt. And we like that type of debt, even though we want to pay it off. We like that debt and we want to pay it off last because that's going to give us the easiest way to create a lot of payment transactional history, build our credit, build our profile, right? So we want to hold on to those. But debts that are, when you get below 50, they're just costing you too much. It's eating up so much of your cash flow that we got to pay those debts off, free up the cash flow, and create a snowball effect to pay things off. This is where a lot of people, some people ask me, well, hey, I was looking at doing a refi on my house. It's okay to do refinancing. I want you to know, we usually preach against it pretty hard. And it's because a lot of times what we see is you already have an inefficient debt. And after you do the refinance, it's still inefficient. You didn't really change anything. Or in the most sinister cases, you had an efficient debt. And then after you refinance it, you now have an inefficient debt. That's the most sinister one that can happen to you. And so what we want to do is when we're calculating our debt efficiency is to really look and see. So if we get to the point where we're below 50, then yeah, it might be time to do some refinancing. But there's a lot of ways to refinance, and a lot of people look at just the interest rate. Some people play around with terms, but if what we're trying to do is get a lower monthly payment, if that's really what your goal is, then lowering the interest rate will do that, or extending the term will do that. But if you have the ability to lower the interest rate and extend the term, that's going to significantly reduce the monthly payment. By itself, just refinancing though is sometimes a bad idea, because now you have to start the clock back at 0. And if you've extended your term and lowered your interest rate, you're still stuck. You're like in a web. You tried to break free and you're still stuck.
Right.
And so
it's only part of the equation. I mean, if you're going to do that.
But if you're going to refinance with the goal of using a credit banking strategy, you've freed up cash flow to give you the fuel to go ahead and knock this sucker out.
Now that is the possibility. If you're freeing it up so you can have more cash on hand to affect all your debt, but that's not usually what happens. It's, oh, now I got an extra $200 a month to spend.
Exactly. And that's where people get off. So back to the original question, how do you know which debt to pay off? Well, pay off the lowest number on your debt efficiency continuum first. That'll free up the most cash flow that's hurting you. And then you snowball that into the next one. And then you eliminate that debt, which frees up more cash flow. And this starts to really, it has like a hockey stick curve. It really begins to pay off that debt super fast. Now, that's credit banking, folks. And we get a lot of objections. We do. There's a lot of people say, well, that doesn't work. And I've got all these questions for you. Somebody will say, well, wait a minute. If I eliminate our savings, what do we do in case of emergency? That's a good question. That's fair. It's decent. Let's go back to the rules. Remember, we're leaving 50% of the line of credit open for emergencies. Well, what does that look like? Well, let's go back to the $25,000 limit, right? So as we're going through months after months of doing our credit banking strategy, let's say we're at one point where all of a sudden we've got a $2,000 hospital bill we need to take care of. Okay, that could happen, right? I mean, you could have great insurance that pays, it seems like it pays for everything, but it doesn't, right? And then maybe it only pays for 80%, and you got to come out of pocket for $2,000. Can you use a credit card to pay a $2,000 hospital bill?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But think about this. You're going through your process and now you had to put more money back on your card. That's okay. Or you might have been at the start of this process and had to put $2,000 on. Again, that's okay. In fact, we have left open for ourselves $12,500. And if, depending on where we're at in the cycle, we can actually, if we get to the end and we had a $25,000 emergency, we could actually handle a $25,000 emergency. But in this example, let's say we had to take care. Well, that's okay. So we pay the bill. And so we just keep, get right back on track the very next month. And so in this example, it was like paying off a $13,000 balance over 7 months. Well, we set ourselves off by 1 month.
Right.
Not a big deal. Emergencies have a lot of different, what constitutes an emergency?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the person and the situation, but something that if it's not addressed, it's going to impact your credit score. If it's not addressed, it could impact your quality of life. I mean, like you said, a hospital bill, new tires for the car, the water heater goes out,
Well, I look at it like this. I agree with what you said, but if I had to put it into 3 categories, I'd say if there's any chance of loss of life of your loved one.
Yeah.
If there's any chance of loss of limb of your loved one.
Yeah.
Right. Injury. Or if there's a potential loss of the means of production, your ability to produce income, right? Or somebody you loves, has a potential, right? So it's you or somebody you love is either going to lose their life, limb, or access to the means of production. Then I think that those constitute as emergency.
That's a good way to break it down.
And everything else seems to, people will try to justify maybe this is an emergency. Look, if
more of a want than a need.
Exactly. Now, next objection we get is, you know what? You said make a $13,000 payment from my credit card onto my mortgage. Hey, my bank doesn't take credit cards. Well, first of all, there's the obvious thing is, well, credit cards do cash advances, right? And let's say that kicks your credit score up to 30% interest. People are like, oh, that's 30% interest. Remember, it's APR. It's actually only, 2.5?
Right.
Right. It's still not that much, but you could do that. And remember, you're using a credit banking strategy, so you're going to pay it off in 1 month. And then you could go do a cash advance again. And you're like, but that's adding all this extra interest. Well, as we showed last week, in the first 5 years of a loan, you have on every payment you're making, 80% of your payment is going to interest. So if we're using a credit card at 21% interest, every month, 1.75% of all your payment is going to interest. And if all of a sudden we had to do a cash advance and bump that up from 1.75 to 2.5, are we still ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just have to rework your numbers. But so a cash advance, but there's other options.
Let's say you got a 0% credit card though.
That'd be awesome. But you can always ask your credit card to provide you with checks.
Yep.
Right? That's always an option. People don't even realize that.
Balance transfer checks. Yeah.
Right. So that gives you an option there. What about this? You could link your credit card. Not everybody has this as an option, but if your credit card is through your bank, you could link it to your checking account for overdraft protection.
Yep.
That's another option.
Mm-hmm.
And then even if that isn't open to you, there's always companies out there like Plastic. Now they should give me a kickback, I feel like, because I promote them so much. But they are a very useful tool. They're a third-party provider, third-party processor. They're going to charge 2.5% per whatever the balance is, but they can make a wire transfer to your bank and make the payment for you. So again, 2.5 added to your 1.7 is what, 4.25%?
Right. And so this would be like one of those cases you have a 0% credit line that you wanting to take full advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. But see, you just have to think outside the bank. I mean, the bank says no, and we're conditioned to be like, yes, sir. I mean, no. I mean, if you want to pay your mortgage with a credit card, you can do it. You just have to find a way to do it. Just because they won't take the credit card payment doesn't mean that somebody else won't, or there isn't a way forward. So you just got to find which solution works best and which numbers work best for you. Now, here's a I don't get this objection a lot, but I have got it several times. So I throw it in there for people to see. People are like, I don't want to lose the tax deduction for my mortgage interest. You're showing me how to pay off my house super fast, but once I pay that off, then I don't get that mortgage interest deduction and then what am I going to do? So, okay, let's look at this, right? This is a case of what I call tripping over dollars to pick up a penny, right? But let's take person number one and person number two. Both make $60,000 in income. Person number one, paid off their house, right? Person number two is still paying on their house. So they get to deduct the mortgage interest, $11,933. So the taxable income of person number one is $60,000, and the taxable income of person number two is $48,067. Again, we're making things simple. We're pretending in this world that there's only one write-off that we're dealing with, okay?
Right.
So the difference is that person number one is going to pay $2,984 more in taxes than person number two. However, look at this. Person number one has $45,000 of disposable income for the year, right? Because they didn't have to make any mortgage payments. Like, you're forgetting that you're not making mortgage payments. Person number two had to make mortgage payments, right? So they're working off of less income. They have $38,051 to work with. So the financial advantage to person number one in that scenario is they have $6,949 more dollars every year to work with. How would you like to have $6,949 more dollars to work with? Whew. So also keep in mind that person number one saved $38,713 in interest in just their first year of using credit banking, and they saved $114,000 over the 7 years that it took them to pay that off.
Wow.
So folks, that's the credit banking strategy. So what we showed you over these last few weeks is how to budget, right? And create cash flow, and then which is better, a line of credit or a loan, and to put our cash flow into our loan. And then we have used that to implement the credit banking strategy, which is really our GPS, the global positioning satellite that helps you find which way to go. But I also call it GPS in getting peace of mind swiftly. Because when you get out of debt, when you knock out $13,000 of principal payment in 7 months and save $38,000 of interest, wow, that's exciting. We're just using the bank products against themselves, folks. So again, remember, we take our cash flow, put it into our line of credit, and then we begin using the credit banking strategy and this GPS to get us towards our goal of financial freedom. That is the credit banking strategy. And today we're going to be working with a wonderful budget where it's tight income, but there is a little bit of cash flow. And we're going to show not only how to eliminate credit card debt, retail debt, They have some student loan debt as well, but they also have a house mortgage. We're going to eliminate all of this debt today, utilizing less cash flow than what we saw in this example.
Oh, beautiful.
About $1,000 of cash flow is what they have to work with, but we're going to use that and completely eliminate their debt. You definitely want to stay here for the case study. And if you're here in the actual webinar, the Zoom webinar, then you're going to be here for the case study. But before we go, Ray, you have a public service announcement to give our folks.
Absolutely.
Just take about 5 minutes, would you?
All right. So where does this fit into the entire equation? So each and every week, we want you to understand, where does this fit into everything that we are talking about? The 5 pillars of wealth. Now, wealth is a mindset. You've seen it where folks have actually lost wealth and money and businesses, yet they have it all back very quickly. How did they do that? Well, they understand these systems, understanding business, taxes, credit, banking, real estate, and education. Every single dollar in the US economy flows through these systems. They basically rule everything. And if you don't understand these systems, you're going to be taken advantage of. Tonight, we're going to just briefly touch base on real estate. Now, the power of real estate is you can build equity, you can build security, opportunity for massive income, also passive income. It is the most ideal investment vehicle. Now, there's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Now, what does that actually mean? So you're going to hear a lot of new ideas tonight. If you have a fixed mindset, then nothing new will work for you. If you have a growth mindset and open to new ideas, I can kind of guarantee, or we could teach you and help you learn new techniques that can change your life forever. So just because you know the rules does not mean that you're going to win the game.
Like chess.
Absolutely. You have to know the strategies that will give you an advantage. I'm going to show you 3 strategies on how to be successful in real estate investing. So let's take a look here. Jeff Bezos gave up a VP position in making over $250,000 a year when he decided to create Amazon. Now, that's pretty much what he's like, what is not going to change? That's what he is thinking. And so what's not going to change? Well, people are always going to need housing. Rents are always going to rise over time. Real estate investors make money in good and bad markets. Also, you are responsible for making your dreams a reality. They are not making more land. It is a scarce resource. Unless it's like Dubai, where they're like trying to pile up a bunch of sand to make their own little islands.
And China is making some artificial islands too.
Now, those who know the strategy make more money than those who don't. So let's talk about the real estate fundamentals. Now, you need to be able to find real estate. So finding things that are not necessarily on the MLS, the multiple listing service. We use a system called Renatus iOS. This is an investment operating software. Now, of course, if you want to know more about the Renatus iOS system, we can help you get access to that. But we use this system to find distressed properties. It looks through public records, data sources, NOD lists, and it pulls that data for you. Now, the next thing is, once you have found something, you need to be able to fund it. So what if you have no money, no credit? Well, there's really no problem. There's a way to actually get that job done. Next, you got to fix it. So we got to change the value. We got to change the profit. We got to turn it into a profitable situation. Next, you can put a tenant in there. So how do you actually attract quality tenants to ensure that they're going to be there for a long time? I'm sure you've heard somebody say, oh, don't get into rental properties because the tenants, but the key comes down to, do they know how to actually find the right tenants? Also, what about managing your property? So tool systems to really put the management that you need in place. And last, selling your properties, really how to attract buyers, how to negotiate with buyers, and create awareness about the property that you have to sell.
That's my favorite part.
It is. This is all that's included in really understanding the foundations. You got to understand these about real estate. To find out more about what we're doing on the real estate side, go over to follow us to freedom.info, where you can tap into this larger community of real estate investors, entrepreneurs, business owners who are working together to achieve that freedom. All right. And now,
Ray, you did a great job. You did that in 5 minutes. Good
perfect.
job.
Yeah.
Good job, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. You know, folks, you should realize that we call Ray the property guy because, I mean, this guy is amazing. He, over the last 2 years, has done 20 deals. We're talking about fix and flips, wholesales. He also has 5 rental properties. This is, it's like if you were like putting together like a dream team, right? Rookie of the year. This is a guy that you want on your team. I mean, he has a background as a contractor and it does a really great job. A lot of people down here in Southern Arizona, at least, call him the property guy to solve their solution. So thank you for giving us a little insight. When can somebody learn more about real estate investing?
Well, so by going over there, but then also Thursday nights, we have a real estate investor mastermind. So you can get a custom Zoom link from our website, wiseguysandties.com, underneath our events tab.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you can find us on YouTube.
Perfect.
Under the Wise Guys and Ties YouTube channel.
Good job, Ray. Now, folks, we're going to get into the case study next for those who are in and a part of the webinar. But, you know, for those who are attending on YouTube, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. And if you'd like to learn of this case study where we're going to work with an actual 2-income family and see how they get out of debt with only about $1,000 of cash flow and eliminate all of their mortgage and their credit card debt, student loans, they eliminate all of that. Well, folks, you need to go to wiseguysandties.com/events and get registered for this webinar. And then you could join us on the other side. But for those who are here in the webinars, just stay right where you're at, because as soon as we shut it down on YouTube, we're going right into the case study. But for those who are on YouTube, we want to thank you for joining us. And we look forward to working with you, and make sure you join us for Thursday nights webinar. Register for it, but on YouTube we'll also be live as well, going over another amazing real estate investing strategy on
Absolutely.
Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So on behalf of myself, Joseph Smith, and Ray Fleming, to those of you on YouTube, we want to say good night and God bless. Those of you who are here for the case study, stay right where you're at. You're in the webinar.